Hello, welcome back to the Chicago School of Fusing. I'm Laura Wazalowski, and this is Frieda Anderson.
Hello.
Hi, Frieda. What are you going to show us today?
I'm going to talk about pillowcasing your artwork. Instead of putting a binding on the piece, I'm going to talk about pillowcasing it.
Good idea.
Hi, I'm going to share with you how I do a pillowcase finish for this little quilt. I have done pillowcase finishes on even larger pieces as well. This little quilt finishes up at about 7 by 8 inches, but I've done pieces as big as 45 inches with this same technique.
You are one brave woman.
Yes. What I want to do to begin with is square up my top of my little quilt and then add it to batting and square the two together. If you don't have fusible on your quilt top, I also will use a spray adhesive called 505 to put the two together. And then I'm going to take a piece of backing fabric and I'm going to make it exactly the same size as my quilt top. Square it up exactly the same and add in a piece of fusible at the top end of my quilt that's about 1 inch inside my edges. And then I will slice that, so I'm going to turn this inside out right through there.
So what you've done is you've put the backing onto the front of the quilt. That's the front there.
Right.
And there's
So
your
there's
backing.
right sides together, just
Oh,
like
I
that.
see. Okay.
Right sides together.
Okay.
But before I sew it, I'm going to trim it up a little bit. I'm going to trim about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch off of the two perpendicular sides, and it doesn't matter which two perpendicular. I usually do a side and the bottom. And before I do anything else, then I will also spray starch this. So I'll use just regular old spray starch to iron this, and that just gives the backing fabric more body. It doesn't want to be all waffly because it would waffle on you if you didn't do that to it.
We don't want waffling.
We don't want to waffle. We want to eat our waffles, not have them in our quilt.
Good idea.
And then when I put it together, I'm going to slightly stretch it a little bit to meet my corners. I'll pin my 4 corners and I will stitch that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So here you can see I've stitched my little quilt sandwich together. I've used a 1/4 inch seam allowance and I've reduced my stitch length so that it's a little bit smaller, probably about 1.9. And when I've come to the corners, rather than pivot at the corner, I've taken a couple of little stitches that go around the corner.
You want to secure the corner.
Yes, you want it to be very tight, but you also, it's easier to turn it inside out if it isn't a straight stitch. Then when before I turn it inside out, I'm going to trim out the edges in my corner so that there isn't any bulk in there. And I'm going to press my seams flat, so that when I do turn it inside out, it will roll very nicely to the back side. I'm still leaving the paper on this. I haven't taken the paper off of that yet. That's an important step.
I did not know that part.
There you are. So then when I turn it inside out, here it is. Here's my slit that I turned it through.
So you kind of put your hand in and pulled everything
You do.
through.
You put your hand in and just pull it right through.
Okay.
And then I've got to take some time and roll my edges and work my edges so that they're nice and flat. I want them to roll to the back of the quilt. I don't want to see the back of my quilt popping through on the front.
Oh, you don't want the backing fabric to be seen on the front, so if you kind of roll, is that why you cut it smaller too?
Yes, that's why I cut it smaller too, is so that it'll all roll to the back.
Okay.
Once I have it pressed the way that I want it, then I'm going to pull that paper off.
Oh.
And I will bring these two edges together and I'll use my hot dry iron and I will close up that opening. No one will be able to see it. Once I've done my quilting on my little quilt, then I'll come in and I'll put my sleeve right over that opening. No one will ever see that.
Oh.
Notice too, Laura, that I put my label on my sleeves. And if I'm going to do that, I will often put a little hanging hook right here as well. Make sure that my sleeve is laying down far enough so that if somebody uses a nail or something, that this doesn't show through at the top.
So you give them the option of using it with a nail or with a slat of wood.
That's right.
What a
So
great idea.
on the back of this one, since this little quilt is so little, I didn't put a sleeve on it at all. I just put the label right over the opening. I made sure that I had a little bit of ribbon or something there to have as my hanging hook. And I actually put this label on while I was quilting, so the quilting would help hold the label down, making sure that this didn't get caught in my quilting.
You are so clever, Frieda.
Oh, Laura.
Wow, Frieda, what a terrific way to finish your little quilt. I love this pillowcase binding.
It's fun. It's a little different. It's, something besides a binding that makes it look like a nice little art quilt.
Perfect.